Hello, aviation. This is an aviation presentation. I'm cutting out anything that has to do with my personal life. So people that start listening to or watching one of my videos and you realize it's about my personal life and you tune out. This is for this a moment of clarity, an epiphanal moment just happened. And I want to make sure that there's an understanding up front that this is all conjecture on my part, okay? But it's the pieces of the puzzle seem to fit. And it has to do with Tesla and Boeing, B-O-E-I-N-G. Boeing is one of my favorite companies. I invested in them briefly a while ago and then got out only because there's so much risk. It's the amount of risk in aviation manufacturing, airliners or airlines. Those of you that have invested in airlines might have found out the hard way. That's a tough sector to do well in investing. I have so much admiration and respect for the Boeing company, though. Somehow or another, they have dominated the aviation industry for the past, well, since World War II. They've really been the dominant player there. They were the only player up and through the 60s, and then in the 70s, Airbus came in with the A300. But they use internal combustion engines, right? And those engines have evolved and have progressed in their efficiency at an amazing rate, really, and they just keep on getting better. But I heard two things today, or actually two things in the last couple of days. I watched the Tesla introduction of the semi truck in their presentation. I think it was Thursday night on their first deliveries of the semi truck to PepsiCo, and the main thing that came out of that presentation for me, and I haven't heard too much about it, except for maybe, who was it, Rob Maurer and somebody else, Electrified. Steve Mark Ryan, he's a gas, that guy. He's a riot. But I'm looking just for basics and technicals, and Steve Mark Ryan gets more on the emotional level, which is entertaining. He's entertaining. But so these two things came together in my head, and I was like, it was an aha kind of moment, and this very well could be, and it seems to make sense. Are Tesla and Boeing involved in some kind of behind-the-scenes negotiations for an electric motor for airplanes in the 30s? So we're in the 2020s, so it'd be next decade. Who cares, right? Who cares about something that's going to happen that far out? Well, companies care and investors care. Long-term investors. So in a previous video, I said I couldn't buy Boeing at this point, only because they've got so much risk with the debacle of the Max 737s, complete debacle. The CEO, how does some of these guys get to be a CEO? I mean, they get there and they so many times, I guess I see them like they look like clowns. Like the CEO, I don't even remember his name, but through the Max accident nightmare, he was terrible. My God, I don't know what goes through a guy's mind like that. But anyway, so the semi delivery to Pepsi and that introduction, it was kind of a streaming affair. It was like a big presentation. It was a decisive moment for Tesla. And they're talking about the Tesla Semi, and a lot of people have said that they didn't give very much technical information. But they gave one very important piece of information. It blew my mind. The power, the motor, the electric motor that powers that thing, that can drag something that weighs 82,000 pounds, 500 miles without recharging. That's a pretty damn good motor. And it's a Tesla motor. You know how big it is? It's a little bit bigger than a football. And there's three of them. I think I know there's two in the back. On the other one, I think all three of them are in the back on the 8-wheel carriage area in the back where the fifth wheel is, you know. So there's the 2 front wheels, and then there's 2 heavy-duty axles in the back that provide the power. And this is my take on it, that there's 3 of these motors the size of a football, a little bit bigger than a football. You can carry it under your arm. And these motors are so powerful. Now, obviously, they're getting a lot of power from the batteries to do that. But still, these 3 small electric motors provide all of the torque needed to help this thing drive 500 miles without stopping, dragging 82,000 pounds. That's the high limit, for legal limit for weight, you know, semi-tractor trailer weight limits on national highways. So, anyway, so Tesla has that motor. Now, in the past, Elon Musk has been asked, you know, about designing an electric motor for airplanes, and he said he was intrigued with the idea. And there were several factors going in favor of that. Number one is that the higher up an electric motor goes in the atmosphere, the more efficient it's going to be than an internal combustion engine, because it doesn't need oxygen. It, you know, it can run just as efficiently at, let's say, 70 or 80,000 feet. Our current airliners generally top out at 40 to 45,000 feet. They don't go any higher than that. Because the air gets so thin, there's not enough oxygen to burn the fuel that's going into their engines. Not going to have that problem with electric motors. Okay, you ever see the engines that are on airliners nowadays? They have this huge front fan. It's a high bypass ratio technology, meaning that there's cold air and hot air coming out the back, and since there's a drastic difference in those temperatures, it enhances the thrust, it reduces noise, all kinds of good things from high bypass engines. They were developed in the early 60s, but they've been refined and evolving since then. So, you know, we're going back, you know, 70 years. 70 years. Yeah, so 60s, right, 40, 60 years, okay, so 60 years, 60s, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2000, yeah, well, 60 to 70 years for, you know, the high bypass internal combustion engine. So Boeing comes out recently because they've been asked a lot about a new airplane design, right? A new airplane to replace the MAX, the 737. And they've decided, the new CEO came out recently and said they don't anticipate any new airplane designs until the middle of the next decade. That's really bad news. And, you know, it's not, I mean, it's bad for prestige. It's, well, what was the last company that had this long intermission between new airplane introductions? It was McDonnell Douglas, and they became irrelevant, basically, and were bought out by Boeing in the 90s. There was another company, I'm not sure who it was, but Airbus is coming out with new airplanes on a fairly regular basis, new engine options, the Neos. And the 737 is selling, but it's not selling like the Airbus family of A320 airplanes. So Boeing's not gonna design a new airplane until the middle of like the 2030s, until the middle of next decade. It's a long time. However, their main supplier for their engines on their airplanes, General Electric and Safran. It's kind of like a partnership between General Electric and this company in France. They make the engines, fantastic engines. Now, what about a decade from now? What about 12, 13 years from now? And there's a new design of, that the Boeing will have, hopefully a new design for a new airplane then. Well, CFM has come out and said they don't expect their new technology engine to be ready for general distribution until the middle of next decade. What a coincidence. And they might have been put on notice that, you know what, Tesla says that they can build an electric engine that's just as good or better than the engines we use now. So all that combustible fuel that's on an airplane, it's basically kerosene, but in an accident it burns like crazy, replaced by batteries. Batteries will burn, but and they can even explode. But it's just not as bad, the fires from a battery in an accident, I'm going to say, as kerosene or gasoline. It's just, it's an obvious difference there. So I'm contending, and I'm making a leap of faith here. I don't have any statistical research to back this up, but it sure makes sense, right? Because Elon Musk is all wrapped up with Twitter now. He can't take on another project. It's too bad. I mean, it makes that Twitter acquisition look even worse. If he could have jumped into the fray with Boeing, Boeing is losing their competitive advantage to Airbus. It's obvious. It's obvious. And they want to stay relevant. If you go 25 years, the last new airplane was a 787. That came out in 2009. So 19, 29, 35, that's 25 years. You're not releasing any new products for 25 years. It's kind of a red flag, it's a danger signal because you're becoming irrelevant. However, if Elon Musk somehow, his time is freed up between now and the end of this decade, I got a feeling that he and Boeing have already spoken about this, or maybe he and General Electric, in developing a new electrical engine. Of course, if Elon Musk is involved, it's going to be a Tesla electric engine. And that electric motor that drives, you can't believe how small this thing is. The motor that powers that semi-truck, it's like this, and like this. It's like but man, it's ready. It's got like, I don't know what the horsepower is. There's only 3 of them. 3 of these like small electric motors and dragging 80,000 pounds plus 500 miles. Now that's a testament also to the batteries, and then the recharging aspect on a semi when it's going downhill. There's a lot of kinetic energy, gravitational push going downhill. As it's going downhill, it's recharging the batteries with these motors. Amazing technology. Could that happen in the air? Yeah, I think it could, because if your airplane is at 70,000 feet, and now you got to start descending to go into where you're going to land. Well, that could be regenerative. That's possibly regenerative. It's cool, man. It's really cool. Tesla and Boeing. I'm wondering if I'm just making too much of a leap of faith here, or is this a real possibility based in logic and innovative thinking? It looks like a good fit to me. It's just the time frame that's a little bit hard to get my head around. Anyway, curious to know what aviation aficionados might think about that. Peace, happy landings.